Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. The good news is, and I think this happened at another event, but lunch is just after my talk, so hopefully that keeps you motivated to stay and listen, and then I think lunch will be served. Thank you for the introductions. My name is Alicia Dauth. I'm with the Water Security Collective, and I'm here to speak about water, obviously, but why I feel that it's important to speak about this today. From all the discussions that we've heard earlier on, there's a common theme. There's transparency, there's waste, and it's not just solid waste, we have waste, we have water, we have wastewater. So I think it's an appropriate thing to sort of give an idea when we're talking about what can we do. I'm going to give some strategies, what your organization can do when it comes to how we can manage our water. How can we ensure that we're using it responsibly, that it's distributed in a way that is equitable for everyone. So just some of the topics I'd want to go over today. What are our water pressures? Meaning, what are our challenges? What should we be aware of? What is water stewardship? Maybe it's a term that's a little bit new, or you're not really clear what it means or how you can be part of it. What is the water stewardship certifications? What can your organization do to become water positive or have a water stewardship certification? Let's skip straight to the challenges. I think a lot of these challenges are obvious to most because I think we're all familiar with them in our line of work. But unless we know the challenges that we're being faced, it makes it very difficult for us to come to those solutions together. And that's another key word, is together. How can we achieve these challenges together? Because most likely, these challenges are something that are impacting others, not just at your site or organization, and beyond your site, and sometimes over boundaries and borders. So we have physical water risks, and I heard some talks about, for example, water quality from landfills. Well, it's about understanding what those risks to the water quality would be. So that would be a physical water risk. Pollution. The stress and scarcity of water. So stress and scarcity are different. If we've got a huge demand for water, that means that we're stressed on that resource. But scarce means we don't have the infrastructure to recover it, or it might be difficult for us to have an infrastructure to reuse it. So stress and scarcity are both water challenges. Obviously, natural disasters such as floods and droughts, ones that we're both familiar with, and it happens globally, one or the other, or both. Infrastructure as well is also a risk, and I know this is a topic that's been carried over from waste, but do we have the infrastructure available and ready to be able to cope with the different challenges of having the needs for treating our wastewater, how we can secure, do we have enough water storage, how big is the storage, how long can it last, who's going to monitor it, how are we going to monitor the leaks? So there's a lot to look for. But once you kind of have these questions answered, you're more in a position to take action. But back to what water stewardship is. I believe it can be part of the solution. It's something that I like to talk about a lot because I really, truly believe it can be sort of that binding gap. So as we have this big gap, what are we going to do? What's next? How do we address this? Well, what I feel is that water stewardship kind of glues everything together. It gives us some sort of framework to understand and to measure the outcomes that we want to see from our water practices. Now, water stewardship involves understanding how interconnected we are. Now, as we're here today as part of the energy, water sustainability, all great themes, all important, but also we have to understand how interconnected they all are. And once we understand that water is that interconnectedness between our energy, between our ecosystems, between our health, it's about how we can take that proactive measures and approaches to address those challenges together. So this is just a very simple cycle of what water stewardship would mean. It's about the management of our water resources. Where is our water coming from? It's about who we're speaking with, the information that we're disclosing, to who, to why, how is it going to be used by others, and then it's also that responsibility. So anybody that's in this room today, I would believe that we're all in a position to take responsibility of how we use water. And I'm making assumptions, but I think that should be our general responsibility as a professional and as just a person. So going on water stewardship, it's not something that, you know, you have to reach a certain point to meet. Even the young ones now, the kids, the children in the schools are starting these very basic practices of water stewardship. So I like to always tell a quick story about my kids because they are the ones on the outside looking in. But we're having a walk, we're walking through the community, we see a leaking tap. I think it's one of the drip irrigation lines leaking. Of course, I said, oh gosh, they're gonna have to fix that. And then the kids start asking, well, how does it get fixed? Whose responsibility is it? How long is it gonna take? A lot of water being wasted going onto the sidewalk. But then my little one, he says, but Mom, as he observes, all the birds are coming and now having a little bird bath in this little pool of water that's sort of accumulated on the sidewalk. And then he said, is it still being wasted because somebody else is benefiting from it? The birds now are having a bath. And I said, well, that's a good point. It's not really being wasted because now it's, you know, benefiting the birds. But I told him, not like this because he's 6, but water stewardship is something that it's intentional. You plan, you know, when you're having a water stewardship plan, and I'll quickly talk about that in the other slides, it's about having that attention. You're being responsible. You're regenerating something. A water leak is usually accidental, something that could be prevented. So it was sort of to describe to them, and I think as an example to others, when they're asking what water stewardship is, it's about water stewardship is intentional. We go out of our way to ensure that we are managing our water resources in a responsible way and something that's equitable, not just for people, that's important. Water for our health is important, of course, but also our environment and ecosystems. So water stewardship, these 4 key points is how I would describe what it means. So a cornerstone for sustainable development. So this is what, you know, I think how it can apply to most everyone in this room here. It's about understanding, again, how you're connected. We all using water in some form or another. This hotel we're in uses water, every aspect of it, from the taps, from the toilets, from in the kitchen, in the laundry, everything. But it's about understanding, if we take this place that we're in now, how is this hotel aware of their water? Are they tracking it? Yes, of course, they want to know how much they're using because they have to pay the bill. But it's not just about being a utility, it's about how that water can be that resource and how it can be ensuring that it's not impacting others. And also, it's about ensuring that they are protected from any water risks that might happen on the site from a flood, but also to make sure that they're not impacting others as well. So individuals and businesses and communities, we all play a part, and I've heard this in various discussions today, and I'm glad we're in agreement with that. But the water stewardship is something that organizations can take on board, and they can actually set targets that can be measurable, that can be accountable, that can be actionable, and something that can be achieved. So if you go to the SMART, you know, way of thinking for a SMART target, it's about how can we have an outcome that we want that's not just going to benefit us, but that's going to benefit others. So water stewardship can support companies to help implement the process that they have, all the activities that they have. It doesn't have to be something that's for a company that's using huge amounts of water. It can be for any organization who might be concerned at looking at water risks internally or externally as well. So yes, water stewardship can be a part of the puzzle, I like to call it, because there's many different pieces that make the bigger picture. We know that. But I think it is that important piece to the puzzle for a water-secure future. Oops, wrong way. I don't know what I've done. Now you'll be stuck on this slide. Okay, so why it matters. So not just water stewardship, that's one part of it, but it's about looking at water assurance. And water assurance meaning, okay, well, we're getting the data, we have the information, it's great. Well, what do we do with it? What does it mean? Who do we share the information with? How can we track it? How can we improve on it? So water assurance is about consistency. Are we tracking the data where we need to be getting it from? Well, what's the purpose of us tracking this data at all? So it's about having that confidence. And that's what water assurance is having the confidence with the data that you're collecting. Because then, once we have that information and that data and that understanding, then we can understand the risks, and then we can mitigate them before they happen. We can foresee before they happen. We can prepare ourselves. So for example, on that, if you're in an area that's maybe prone to flooding, and you have data to say, well, we haven't had a flood in 2 years, but 5 years ago we had a flood. This is the data that we've collected. This is where it comes back to speaking to others is really important. Liaising with the community, utilities, anybody that might be within your water basin to understand any of those risks and work together to address them. But operational excellence, because the data is what helps you make decisions. And I think that can go as a very cross-spectrum way of thinking, but water also has an important component when it comes to how does this make your decisions informed by data that you have. If you see that your water losses might be because of an operational cost, you're not going to reach your operational excellence. Regulatory compliance, that's also a really big one, because you want to make sure that your water quality that's going out of your site is also within regulatory limits. But it's not just about meeting regulatory limits. It's about what can I do beyond. Water stewardship is always thinking about what can I do above and beyond to be better. And then the management under water assurance. So the practices, the management that you have in place, the systems that you have in place to be able to measure and manage your information and your data to make sure you're achieving those outcomes is all part of that consistency with water assurance. And then management can also be something that can be done by a third-party verification. Goodness. I'm going backwards. Okay, somebody's moving it for me, thank you. This is the slide. So that brings me to my next point on certifications and what that means and how that can support. So of course, you can have a water management plan, you can have a water efficiency plan, whatever strategy you've developed or you feel that's helping. But how about if you have a third party come to verify that your practices are water positive, which is another verification that's just come out. But these are just two examples of a few different water stewardship certifications. I audit against both of these certifications, so both have their pros and cons. But there are two ways for organizations to demonstrate that, yes, we understand where our water is coming from, we understand how we're using our water, we're using it responsibly, this is what we're using for, we understand the community's needs, we understand the challenges. So again, water stewardship is about thinking much bigger than just your site. So these two standards can really help your organization find a clear path to verify that what you're doing does have an impact. Because it's one thing to make claims and say we're saving 50% water by doing something at our site, which is great. That's fantastic, and most of the time, I like to believe it's true. But who has come to verify that? Is that information correct? And is it actually helping the greater good beyond your site? Because again, water is a resource that doesn't belong to an individual or a company. It's actually a resource that belongs to all. So how is it being used and shared amongst everyone? So these are just two of the standards that require the auditors to go to the site, depending on the site, if they have multiple sites within a certain water basin. But then the criteria in either standard is closely monitored and obviously done the audit checklist, and then comes with any non-conformities, but then will come with that certification saying, yes, we can say that you are following the criteria, you're meeting the indicators, and here is your verification that you're doing, and you are a good water steward. And there are different tiers within both of these, which will allow you to see how your improvements and your maturity of your water stewardship can improve over time. So, as we're sort of speaking here in general, I thought it'd be good to sort of give you an idea of some strategies that your organization might be able to take on board. These are 8 different strategies that have come from a water stewardship strategy white paper from SCS, but just about what can be adopted depending on where you're at. So as I'm almost out of time, these 8 strategies, if you're interested, take a photo, so we won't go through each of them, but they're just to give an idea that each strategy might be different for different companies based on their challenges and their risks that we were talking about earlier. But some of the outcomes, which I think is one thing I want to, highlight before I end this talk, is that there's a lot of fantastic outcomes that come from having water assurance and certifications that go with it. And I think a lot of these outcomes are something that we try to do as organizations or companies. We want to make sure that we're aligning with greater global goals on the water crisis, that we're demonstrating to our investors that we have ESG in place. We want incentives. We want to be able to say that our claims are accurate. We want to make sure that we are letting people know that, yes, we are transparent, we're open. These are all the outcomes that will be a result under the water stewardship certifications. And this is just a quick example of a different tier. So if we're looking at an SCS global certification, they have different levels, whether it's enterprise-wide, operational site, or if you're looking to maybe do a water regenerative project, can your project be verified through a water positive verification? So this is just giving an example that there's something for everyone. No one is too small. In summary, the water stewardship certification, I think, like I've said before, it's about assisting your organization in managing water risks and also communicating those risks. Because it's not just about knowing them, it's about how you're communicating them as well. Of course, also transparency is a big one, and it's encouraging organizations to communicate with others, because communication is key. Everybody has the right to know. So if I were to have a call to action or some phrases to leave you with, or sort of last thoughts, it's about, yes, adopting those practices. I think it was mentioned before, is we're not on a shortage of solutions. Absolutely not. There's a lot available out there at the moment, but it's about finding what works for you, what can be applied. It's about organizations being pioneers of that and taking it on board. Raising awareness, of course, I think we all agree that's a big one. More awareness, there can never be enough of it. Some of the points from the talk earlier from the UK on water, it's fantastic. We need more of that. Align with what on global trends, targets initiatives, water certifications are another one. It's because it's endorsing your commitment, collective action, and collaborative relationships. So, this is the conclusion. This is my last thoughts. We know in the GCC here, let's just come a little bit closer, but we need to continue prioritizing water security. And this has to be done from a lot of different players, because we have a lot happening here with water. We're in an environment where water isn't sort of a natural thing that we have. We have to make sure that there's enough of it for all the needs that we have. So we need those adaptive practices, and I think water stewardship will play that vital role in ensuring that long-term resilience and the sustainability that we're hoping to achieve in the region. Just a quick note of these are some of the offerings that we do just to help organizations understand their water risks, whether if they're wanting to look training so their staff can understand it. And I thank you guys for listening today. And if there's any questions, hopefully I see you soon. So thank you so much.